Hello everyone, Nathan here, and today I want to talk about some of my favourite games of 2016. Now yes, this video was supposed to come out over a week ago. I had it scripted and ready to go, but my job and other commitments got in the way. So I'm sorry that it's 2017 now and I'm still here talking about 2016, but with that said, after this I'll be back on track and you can expect content to be coming out more often and, fingers crossed, more up to date. Anyway, after all my excuses, let's actually kick this video off with Superhot. Now at this stage it feels like a long time since Superhot came out, so I went back and played some more to try and remember why I loved it, and immediately it all came flooding back. Superhot's unique selling point is that time only moves when you move, and on the surface, that core mechanic of the game is extremely basic, but it's so well implemented that every mission and every little move you make needs to be tactically thought out and ends up being incredibly satisfying when it all comes together, especially when you get to watch everything that you did back in real time for some truly superhuman replays. All the elements of this game work together to offer a very strong product. The visual design, although basic, makes your targets very obvious. The introduction of the hot switch mechanic halfway through the game serves to keep things fresh, and the combination of first-person shooter and tactical puzzling make for a very enjoyable experience. Of course, it's not perfect. The story isn't great, and I have to say that some of the meta stuff only served to take me out of the fun of the gameplay, and alongside that, this is a pretty damn short game. Personally though, I think that's actually a good thing, because I could easily see Superhot outstaying its welcome if it went on for too long. On the other hand though, I can see how some consumers would find it a little bit difficult to part with their cash for only a few hours of gameplay. For me though, the freshness of this game made it one of my favourite experiences of the year, and although I actually managed to finish it in just one day, it stuck with me to the end of the year as one of my highlights. Next up is XCOM 2. This turn-based tactical combat game was the perfect follow-up to XCOM Enemy Unknown for me, as it gave me exactly what I wanted from the franchise, which was basically just more XCOM. This time though, there were new aliens, new missions, and an interesting switch in the human's position from having to defend against an alien invasion, to instead now having to go on the offensive to take the planet back. Your strategies on how to do that are controlled from your huge base, which offers you research and engineering potential, along with many options of how to advance the game through the world map. Now, in my opinion, that management aspect and strategic planning could almost make a game entirely on its own, but it's punctuated by some of the most fun tactical combat I've ever had the pleasure of playing. Taking control of your squad and having them utilise new features such as the stealth mechanic, which allows everyone to stay hidden from the aliens until you're ready to attack, is extremely fun and interesting, and the progression of each of your soldiers as they climb the ranks and gain skills, along with the ability to name and customise them to your heart's content, makes them feel like actual people that you care about, and losing one to a badly thought out move on the battlefield is often genuinely hard to take. Although it does lead to one of my favourite activities, which is naming my squad after my friends, and then letting their real life counterparts know exactly how they died. Another big improvement to my mind is the addition of more timers into missions, which make for more risk-reward scenarios, as you can't just sit back like you could in Enemy Unknown, and instead you have to make that potentially dangerous push in order to complete the mission on time. All of these aspects come together along with its procedurally generated environments to make for a brilliantly fun and replayable gaming experience. So from a game that I've put days of my life into, to another fairly short sweet experience in the form of Firewatch. This is the first game from Studio Campo Santo, and to my mind was a great way to start. Following around main character Henry as he tries to escape his problems at home by taking on a job in the middle of an absolutely gorgeous wilderness was surprisingly interesting for me, given that the majority of gameplay time is spent walking from one location to the next. Key to the game is the relationship that develops between Henry and his co-worker Delilah. Now, there are many touching relationships in gaming, but I think what made this one special for me is the fact that all of the character building and growth in the relationship is done entirely without Henry or Delilah seeing each other. Instead, they're restricted to a series of conversations on walkie-talkies, learning about one another and growing gradually closer. Aside from that though, there is an underlying story and mystery which kept me interested until the game neared its end, and things sort of petered out a little more than I would have liked. I don't want to say too much because this is a very story-focused game, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that maybe the last 20% of the game didn't live up to what came before. Still though, when I finished the game after maybe only 4 hours of gameplay, I felt like I'd had a very interesting and enjoyable time, and the interesting character development mixed with the stunning graphical style made for one of my personal highlights of 2016. Darkest Dungeon is up next, and to be honest, it took me a lot of thinking to even remember that this is a 2016 game. Probably because it initially came out in early access in 2015, and even when it got its full release, it was very early in the year. Nonetheless, the interesting take on turn-based combat and wonderful dark aesthetic that Darkest Dungeon offers made it one of my favourite games of 2016. This is a game where you have to send out a party of adventurers into different missions in order to gain back control over your estate, which has become overrun by horrible, grotesque beings that were uncovered as your ancestor delved too deep beneath the estate. Now for me, what really makes this game a special one is the individuality of each of your adventurers. Sure, you can name them after your friends, which I've made clear several times is something I absolutely love in games, but aside from that, they all develop both positive and negative characteristics that relate to their experiences. You can have characters who can't help but loot absolutely everything they see, or maybe they're a drunk, or maybe they even just get nervous in certain situations, and that's important because those nerves also carry over into the combat system. Now, I said a minute ago that the take on turn-based combat here was interesting, and that does largely come down to those nerves or stress levels. In most games, if you lose all your health, your character dies, and that's all you have to worry about. In Darkest Dungeon though, there's a second bar alongside your health bar, which is possibly even more important, and that's the stress bar. If this stress bar maxes out, a character will face a test of their resolve, and they can either show their courage and come back from the brink, or entirely lose control of the situation, which ends up affecting the rest of your party too. I feel that adds a very compelling layer of tactics into the game, despite the obvious reliance that system has on RNG. When you combine those interesting game mechanics with the aesthetic and interesting character development, you're really onto a winner, and that's why it's one of my favourites of 2016. Not to mention the absolutely superb narrator.
Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all.
No surprise in the final game in this list as we move on to Overwatch. The brand new IP reinvigorated my interest in multiplayer shooters as its cast of colourful and varied heroes offered something completely different to the array of military shooters that we've seen over the past decade. Honestly, I really think the thing that sets Overwatch apart is the heroes. It's not like there's a lot of new innovative game modes or even exciting maps, but the heroes mean there's something in Overwatch for almost everybody. Now, a lot of multiplayer games have been going down a bit more of a casual route over recent years in order to try and draw in more players, but Overwatch hasn't really done that. Instead of dumbing everything down so that anybody can play, they've put in characters for every skill level and playstyle. Sure, there are definitely casual characters, and if you're not godlike with your aim but still want to help out the team, you can play as Winston or Mercy. But if you think of yourself as some kind of FPS pro, then there's McCree or Genji to satisfy your need for something a bit more challenging. The way that those heroes synergize with each other incentivizes team play too, and leads to fun and interesting tactics to break through a choke point or take a tricky objective. Now personally, I've actually stopped playing Overwatch, but it'd be wrong of me to dismiss its impact on my year of gaming. For a good few months, it was my go-to game for a good time, and it even affected things I did outside of just playing the game. I read the comics, watched the esports, and even subscribed to a bunch of YouTube channels purely because of their Overwatch content. Now, I do have some issues with the way that the game handles microtransactions and other things like that, but the core gameplay is easily good enough for me to say it was one of my favourites of 2016. So that's about it for today, and hopefully now I can put 2016 to bed and move on to 2017. An honourable mention should also go to Reigns, by the way, which at such a low price and with such a basic concept was compelling enough that it only just missed out on the cut for this video. I should also probably say that the two games I actually played most in 2016 didn't make this list because they were Hearthstone and The Witcher 3, both of which were not 2016 releases. One thing I did notice about 2016 though is that I think this is the year when I really got some massive franchise fatigue. I didn't really play much of the massive yearly releases like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare or FIFA 17, at least compared to previous titles in the series, and sure, you could definitely make the argument that XCOM 2 is part of a franchise, but it's really been the year of brand new IPs for me, or at least a year of fewer of those cookie cutter cash cow titles. Anyway, enough of that. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very appreciative if you'd click that like button down below. Let me know your favourite games of 2016 in the comments, and subscribe for more like this if you haven't already. I've been Nathan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.